Hey, I'm back with another Dota podcast, and this time I'm talking with Noxville, the Statsman, the Statsman at this point. I think. I
Uh,
think you have slain
is it-
all of the others. They've all been defeated or moved on, and
yeah,
you are now the last Highlander of Dota 2 Statsman, as far as I can
yeah.
tell.
I'm the Giovanni of the stats one. There's still stat. I mean, stats has become like a position where it does lots of different things now. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, stats on a panel. The role of Bruno has kind of dispersed into many ways. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just one of the like Dragon Balls that form the Statsman world.
Yeah, after he split apart, trying to summon Too Good into a Shanghai Major, and then it all
Oh,
collapsed, right? But
yeah, that's
yeah,
oof.
Yeah, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, but obviously you've been very busy at a bunch of these events. I actually have no clue how many you went to. I just know you went to a lot of them.
Yeah, this has like been by far like the busiest season, I think, for pretty much everyone.
I'd imagine
Uh,
so. This is like a full Counter Strike season, basically.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've only worked at three different events live. It was like the ESL Hamburg,
Mm-hmm.
Katowice, Birmingham, and Genzing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the two GSCs and what else did I do? I also did one of the Dream Leagues, but that was remote. And
Yeah.
then all the PGL events I've had to do work for the production. Like they haven't had in-game stats, but
Mm-hmm.
they've had like
Overlays.
when you cross overlays, yeah, like comparisons, end game, pre-game. So there's like a huge amount of like work that goes into that, both like preparing it and making sure it's all good.
All right. So I guess I may as well ask my first question. Feel like stats came in with Bruno, then you and Nahaz started pushing it forward. Has that changed within the last year? Because I remember there's like some post one of you made was like you felt like stats had like kind of stagnated at some point where like you weren't pushing it forward as much as you wished you had.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I said, it started with Bruno, and it was kind of like this like last minute decision at I think TI2 to have him,
Mm-hmm.
and from there, like the role kind of expanded, and certain roles became more diminished, some became more powerful, and then completely new roles came out of it. So, K-pop Tosis took over the mantle. He did TI4, TI5. I mean, sorry, TI3, TI4.
Yeah.
I did TI5, TI6. No one did TI7. There was only like newcomer, like newbie videos. So
Mm-hmm.
like with Tortellini, and no clue what's happening this year. But for the most part, yeah, the like in-game stats role has kind of changed. Um, and then the out like beyond that, there's like a huge amount of work that goes into preparing for an event from a statistical perspective. So there's like the super basic high level. Let's go look on like Dota Buff and
Mm-hmm.
like look at some of the heroes and games that have been playing. And then there's looking at more like aggregate data. So people like the host of the event and has, as a statistics like centric person on a panel, he just will prepare like a huge amount looking at specific things. So most of my work has been working with the host and then doing like a lot of coding related stuff,
Mm-hmm.
overlays. Recently, like as I said, all the PGL events, Starlad has started using some stuff that I wrote. So
Yeah.
there's like an ever expanding requirement for stats in different, like completely different ways that like I never considered.
All right. So here's my question. I guess I got another question because obviously this year they had DPC, so there's like a shitload of events. But on top of
Yeah,
that, there was a patch every 2 weeks. I forget when it started, but it started a while ago. And so,
yeah,
do your stats like kind of like do they change with like do you have some kind of like filter to be like this is for this
yeah,
particular 2 weeks and this for this particular 2 weeks, and do you have like a system that like correlates all of that together?
yeah. So I mean, it's all in like a database, and you can like choose exactly what you want. But for the events that like for PGL, I'll have a discussion with one of their developers and their CEO Silvio. We'll talk about like what like type of range they want to talk about, what the narrative of the event is. So when it came to the super major, they wanted to know a lot of information about, for example, the whole DPC. So they wanted to know every between every team at the super major, have they met before at some stage on LAN during the Super Major,
Mm-hmm.
who won it, was the best of three. They wanted like all this back data.
Yeah.
Um, and like the whole focus of the show was about the DP, like coming to an end of the DPC regular season.
Yeah.
So that was that. But when it was about DAC, it was mostly about like that was the just when like the end of the seasons kind of you felt it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the beginning of the season, like the first half only had two majors, and then the end had like eight.
Yes.
So
Back to back to back to back.
yeah. So it was like Katowice, Bucharest, and it was two minors, but it was like a super short break, and then it was DAC. So it was like all about like preparation coming into the last stretch. There was a lot of like which players have been standing out, which we do we expect to be doing well. So like every event has like a different narrative,
Mm-hmm.
and like the stats are adjusted accordingly, like from that perspective. When it comes to the host, it's also like very difficult because I mostly have worked at events like ESL has had Red Eye as the stage host the whole time.
Yeah.
At GSE, it was Shiva, but Red Eye was the executive producer. And all the PGLs, I think maybe one has had. I think it's actually been Red Eye every time. So when
So mostly
it's
just
like a
red
different
eye.
thing. Yeah, Red Eye's been like the MVP, I think, of the DPC season. But yeah, so he's got a specific set of things that he likes to prepare when going into events,
Mm-hmm.
certain milestones, certain like statistics. And I mean, he's more than willing to accept that the stats that he'll talk about are more like superficial, like high level stuff like, oh, we're gonna see, Dendi play his 1500th game for Navi, or like
Mm-hmm.
he cares about like the big picture stuff, like the storytelling aspect.
Yeah.
Whereas people who are talking on the panels and casters and stuff, they care more about like the finite, the minute statistics that come with like the event. Like, oh, this player hasn't played this hero in a while. This is more interesting. This is
Or
like an
like,
outlier. So
or
it's
like how
like
many times did
it's
New
different.
Vigo Naga Disruptor opening?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Exactly. So it's like it's just different ways of telling like a very similar story or shaping the story into like different perspectives.
Yeah. So basically, you just have like you are connected into the database, and then they have to like plug you in with like a bunch of questions, like, okay, I want this, I want this, I want this. Can you get me something? That's kind of how it works.
Yeah. I mean, it works. It's more like iterative. So it's like, okay, let's get this, and then next event, let's add to this. Let's have this.
Mm-hmm.
Next event, let's have this. So it's like an ever expanding like set of reports and things that people care about.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, the work I do on like that data, new features coming out, it's almost always inspired or requested, or it's something that someone has like mentioned at some stage, or we used to have on the old data, and it just like didn't make it through version 1 release, so it didn't come across. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like there's when it comes to like the underlying like narratives that come out, it's almost always driven by like a question
Mm-hmm. All right.
that needs to be.
So I haven't gotten your take on any of the teams. Actually, I don't even know what you think of the teams, but I'll go ahead and like outline what I think most people think. Basically,
Okay.
the top four teams have basically remained the same from the beginning to end, except for one. Like, so obviously you have Virtus Pro, Liquid, and Secret. Secret went through a few ups and downs, but they're back up now. And then Newbie fell
Yeah.
down, and LGD took their place. Right? Is that
Yeah.
how you feel?
I think you could say that newbie fell down, but they kind of redeemed himself at the end. I think that's
Did they redeem
like a
themselves at
better
the
way
end?
I think that their performance in the Super Major was like reasonable. Like it wasn't super bad. They lost to Vici Gaming, who, it's like whenever it's China versus China on the top teams, it can really go either way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like I think that maybe this is skipping ahead a bit, but newbie versus Vici J, I didn't feel like was like a fair matchup. I think newbie was the team that I favored in that matchup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But newbie was impressive. They took a game off Virtus Pro. That's something that very few other teams in the world can say they've done.
That's true, but I guess that's true. I mean, they did take a game, but it's like you got to take the series, and you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, because this is like Dota, so in all seriousness, you have to invest the threes. Like, it's nice if you take a map, but it's not enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like what's more important in Dota is like you get these like tiers of teams, and you
Mm-hmm.
have like the tier one teams, the tier two teams, and the tier three teams, and the tier four teams, and like those are fundamentally like the four, like you get four tiers when you're talking about like teams in the DPC,
Mm-hmm.
and the tier one teams is literally just the four that you mentioned. It's
Yeah, they're like way above the
LGD,
rest.
LGD, Liquid, VP, obviously, and Secret is kind of like
At
that borderline.
times.
Like yeah, they're the team that was tier one to start off with. They kind of fell down a bit, but then they picked themselves up. I think
Yeah, I think they
also
went from tier
redeemed
one to
themselves.
tier two and then back to tier one right here, right?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe not here, maybe a little bit ago, but yeah, like they lost like GSC. They weren't that bad. They lost
Mm-hmm.
to Keen.
Yeah.
Was their scrim partner. So I mean, I don't feel too bad about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But yeah, they were kind of like the gatekeepers between tier one and tier two. And every time like a tier two team takes a game off tier one, or like tier X takes a game off tier X minus one, that's like those are like the interesting stories really.
Okay.
And I think the exception with that is when you're talking like like two teams in China who are similar tier, because that's like anything can happen. That's like a big roll in the dice.
Yeah, because like regional matchups are always kind of weird, right?
Yeah,
In every
yeah,
game,
yeah, yeah. And
actually. Hmm.
yeah, I mean, and also within China, they scrim a huge amount, specific teams. So there's so much information that you just don't have access to. So sometimes, like, everyone will perceive a team as stronger coming in, but they'll get completely stumped. And it's just because we don't see that what's happening that much.
Yeah, because we're only getting like the end result out of like could be like 100 games or however many it is or however long they've played against each other, right? So
Yeah,
all right, so I will ask you about one specific team, Outlier. Basically,
yeah.
Skim is almost certain this team, like heavily benefited from the patch. I think you know who I'm talking about. It's Mineski. Won
Hmm.
DAC. They got mid patch. They got Pangolier, and
Yeah.
Ice 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 is basically like the best Pangolier player at that tournament, right?
Probably is still one of the best. I
Probably
mean,
still, yeah,
Nan Pasha played really well in a couple of games, but yeah, for the most part, probably, yeah, definitely like one of the top pros players of on the hero.
yeah,
I think it's yeah, like with the short patches, you get this situation where sometimes a team gets a huge buff and sometimes a team gets a huge nerf. The way that the community views it is like, oh well, everyone's equally advantaged or disadvantaged, and that's like a ridiculous position to have. Like if you went into TI3 and just before TI3 you ban Nature's Prophet and Lone Druid, it obviously affects everyone equally on like a superficial level, but really it hurts Alliance the most.
yep,
And in the same way, getting a Pangolier buff, sure, it affects everyone. Everyone has access to the hero, but it means a lot more for specific teams. So
mm-hmm.
I think that it, first of all, they were a team that they needed a change. They needed like some sort of change. They were a team that was like, I want to say holding on for a patch.
Yeah,
Like they wanted more
literally,
than anything. Actually spoke to them at I think it was ESL Katowice, and
yeah,
they said we don't care at the moment. Like we're doing like you know moderately, but we're not doing amazing. But once the next patch comes, that's when we'll know what's up.
mm-hmm. So the reason I chose this team is because it's like oh, because this is like one of the weirder teams that kind of like represents a bunch of weird things that gone on in this particular EPC. Is because we don't really know of the sim. It's kind of weird to say, even though like a patch happened every 2 weeks. We don't actually
Yeah,
know the symptoms of what that could have done to competitive play in the sense that we also had a tournament every 2 weeks, right?
yeah. So that's the thing. Is like sometimes there's a patch that comes out, and like a GSC, right? There
Mm-hmm.
was a patch that came out, and the team started playing like the next day. It was like between groups and playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
and the team started playing with it. And there's two things about that. First of all, that's like obviously ridiculous. Like, I can't imagine. Like Counter Strike is actually the only other esports I know that's done something this stupid. You know, having a patch just before. You know,
No,
when
StarCraft has done it before. Shout out to
oh yeah,
Blizzard.
yeah. Okay, but yeah, like Counter Strike did it where they like rebalanced the pistols, I think it was,
Yeah.
and just before like the ESL major,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, okay, well, we're gonna play the old version. Sorry, like
Yeah.
there's teams flying now. They're gonna land. They're gonna be jet lagged. They're gonna sleep. They're gonna wake up. We're not making them play a completely different game. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So so that's one aspect, and then the second aspect is just teams come into an event prepared in a specific way. So for them, if there's like a patch and it makes their strategy like, let's say their strategy was like a 9 out of 10, and their preparation was like 8 out of or 9 out of 10. Uh, if they could change now, like the patch comes out, and they could change it up, and they could like their strategy was a 9 out of 10, and now it's an 8 out of 10. So they could change to be a 10 out of 10 strategy. Like they've got such a great idea. Odds are they're going to just fall back on what there's like tried and tested because they're just way more prepared on it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of teams you would see after a patch, they would just be forcing the same heroes that they were playing before the patch, or they were practicing beforehand, which not really anyone has access to. And then they would come into the tournament and they would win or lose. And the information, like first of all, the commentators and the public would say, "Oh, see, this patch wasn't that big. They played the same heroes," and that's like. Yeah, that's just like hashtag fan logic. Like you get that sometimes where people like can't distance themselves from what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to like look at the outcome and then like fill in all the blanks.
And
Like
like
they
trying
see
to
a
reverse
change, they see
engineer
the
it.
outcome. Yeah, exactly. So that's like a problem. And a lot of teams had that when changes came out, but Valve decided after some time that they were going to stop doing that. And I think when they announced it was just after DSC or just after Starladder, and they were like, okay, guys, after for the rest of the DPC, we're not going to deploy any changes midway through majors. We're going to wait until the end. And then GSC was like the second event after that, and it wasn't a major, and there was a patch that came in. So, ultimately, they got the right goal. And since then, they've also clarified next season they're not going to have so many of these small patches.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna go for like bigger patches.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall we got the right outcome, but we've got it in a really wonky way. I guess the DPC as a system is in a similar situation.
Yeah, because like it's kind of weird. Like I feel like the patching and the fact that the DPC events stacked up on top of each other so much kind of canceled the effects of each other out in a sense.
Yeah.
So like
I mean, in some cases it cancelled out, but in other cases it just amplified like a problem or it amplified like a buff. So it's very, very hard to say, especially because every team's path through the DPC was so different.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the teams were going like event to event to event to event. They go home, they qualify, like they're supersets, right?
Yeah.
Another team, they go to one event and they go home. They get home, they've just got home, and now they got to do all these grindy qualifiers that like, over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
They've been traveling, especially when you're traveling to like SEA in China, like people always get sick. I don't know why. Like I'm not saying anything special about those areas. Maybe it's just like it's a different environment for them. So you got to a lot of teams, especially from NA, they go to China or Southeast Asia and they get sick.
It's generally the water, but yeah. There's a few other
Sometimes
reasons why.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the water, sometimes it's the air.
Sometimes the fact that here's an underrated reason: the fact that they have to do meet and greets with the fans. Like you shake 1,000 people's hands, you're gonna get sick. I don't care who you are, right? Like it's pretty likely.
Yeah. I think I've seen Eternal Envy wear a face mask at some of the meet and greets, but yeah, like there's just so many factors, like traveling a lot, like when you're actually in an airport, you're in an airplane and they don't recycle the air as much.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many more ways in which you get sick, and that can really impact it if you're a team. Impact you a lot more if you're a team that has to go through qualifiers. You don't get direct invites,
mm-hmm.
and you constantly on this like journey, like going to one or two events, going home, going to one or two events, going home. So one of the things I actually said as like a proposal for next season, if they want to keep the DPC so full. They should consider having maybe one or two events throughout a year where it's like slightly a bit more regionalized. So instead of having an 8-team event where you have to have one team from every region at least, and the 2 direct invites, this was before the announcement was made,
mm-hmm.
That you can't have direct invites, but rather you have like a regional, so you have like a West versus East. So if you do it in like New York and you do it in like somewhere in China, then no one has to travel more than like 5 hours to get there.
Yeah.
So Southeast Asia goes to China. CIS can go to China. It's a little bit more for them, I think. Maybe it's like 7 hours. and Europe goes to NA, and NA is in NA. South America goes to NA. Everyone's like not shifting too much of a time zone,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not traveling too far.
Yeah.
They do that like these two regional events on like adjoining days, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or adjoining weeks, just so that you have like a bit of a break from this like hectic circle, a sort of cycle of qualifier event, qualifier event, qualifier, qualifier event.
Mm-hmm.
But their solution or Valve's solution is rather just to limit the number of events a little bit. Like I think it was announced that it's like 6+ for next year or
It's
something.
like five
Uh,
total, five majors total, but like each is paired with a minor, right?
yeah, yeah. That was also something which, like, I got interviewed by Red Bull, and they asked for a bunch of ideas for how to like fix the DPC next season, and the paired events or something I also said was an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think the way I've said it was you have like a minor and a major. Those are not linked, but if you do well in this minor, you get invited to the next major. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like a zigzag as
Where
opposed to like
yeah,
you
whereas like
travel
this
straight.
one's straight up like the CS:GO version.
Yeah,
Like you get basically a major qualifier into the major, right?
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. On a side note, like that's actually one of the reasons why I was very confused. Like, I feel like I was very confused. Like when the Pangolier thing came out, right, and then like a bunch of other heroes came out, and it's like, and like people were arguing with me like it does it's fine if it comes out mid tournament. Like, oh, why is it fine? It's like because they've had forever to practice this, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, why would you as a competitive player practice something you don't even know is going to come out when you're traveling and doing all these
Well,
qualifiers? Like, I've always thought that was like a very weird sort of argument.
well, there's two things about it. So, the first thing is when a player practices something, is like there's the component of just playing like spamming it in pubs, and then there's also the component of playing it in like scrims.
Mm-hmm.
So in scrims, it's very rare that you're gonna say, okay, well, we're not playing captain's mode, we're playing like all pick or something.
Yeah.
And the only other tournament where I think Pangolier had been picked was captain's draft.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if how many times Mineski picked it. I think two or three, and then it got banned against them. They were like it just happened to come up in the pool, and I think
Yeah.
if they were, I might be wrong on that, but yeah, that was where we saw Dark Willow and
Mm-hmm.
Pango get picked quite a lot. But yeah, there's also so in a competitive sense, maybe an offlaner is slightly more likely to be picked because it's a hero that like Ice could spam in pubs, could play in the offlane, and he had like experience playing the hero, experience playing against other high skilled players, not necessarily in a scrim environment, but at least in a way that was like didn't rely on like synergy or practice with his players.
Yeah, because
When you
he's
talk
like
about
on an
like Naga
island,
Siren,
basically, right?
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, for the most part
He,
there were
yeah,
the
he
offlaner
is
was
a bit of a solo player. Like that's kind of his specialty.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So maybe in that sense, whereas Dark Willow, it's a support.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a you can play it in the offlane as well, obviously, but mostly just play it as a support or an offlaner. And when you're playing support, you like often picking heroes. You want to test the synergy out. You want to like, especially with newbies, Sand King, Naga Siren.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain combinations you want to try. You want to see how it feels, what it's good against, what it's bad against. And when heroes just come out of the blue, it can help some teams, but on average, it's hurting most of the teams.
All right, that makes sense. All right, so I'll ask one more question about the top four, right? Secret, Virtus
Yeah,
Pro, LGD, Liquid. I actually
yeah.
I did a podcast with Pal yesterday. We both and I asked him what his favorite was. He's picked VP to win TI, whereas I picked
With who was this?
Pal, like the SCA guy.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I thought you said Tell, and I'm like,
who I have no clue.
Fly Dota.
Yeah, no. But basically, he went with Virtus Pro because Virtus Pro's obviously been the most dominant team throughout the year. Very high performing, very aggressive. Seemed to have a very solid playbook, right? Whereas
Yep.
I went with Liquid because I feel like Virtus Pro is more likely to break under the pressure, and I know Liquid is mentally strong enough to pull through what I think is like TI is completely different from every other tournament. Like it's a lot more about your mental strength as well as everything else. So
Well, there's a few things that TI is all about. It's like your ability to adapt, like every super big event has like its own meta that develops. So
Mm-hmm.
having a big hero pool, there's an element of luck.
Yeah.
You can have a hero pool that like the meta heroes could just be heroes that you're good at.
Uh-huh.
There's there's so many elements that come into it. And yeah, I think that's part of the reason why VP is regarded as such a good team because
They have a ridiculous
they
hero pool.
no they just their ability to adapt is super solid.
Yeah.
Like there were many times in this DPC where they did actually get knocked down and they fought their way back up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that like bad things happen. I think that their team is stronger with Roger now. He seems more motivated than Lil was. I mean, they're both great players, but like the whole team of Virtus Pro. I mean, I see Virtus Pro events quite a bit because they work ESLs and
Mm-hmm.
that's yeah, they always seem super positive. Even when they lose, they're so motivated, especially Ramses. Like
Mm-hmm.
Ramses and Roger, they're just in it to win it. Um, but yeah, like when where was it? They lost against Vici at Katowice, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, and they got knocked down, and then they fought their way back, won themselves another Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Still like
they
too short, maybe.
yeah, they've got three because there were four ESL events, but the Genting didn't have a Mercedes.
Yeah. So basically,
Yeah,
they need two more to complete the set.
yeah. So I mean, perfectly able to come back. I think it's more just about like the marathon that TI is because all these events, even the super major, for them it wasn't that long. For them, they GSL groups, which is shorter, way shorter than doing like
The round robin
playing
groups.
against eight
Yeah.
round robin best of two against eight other teams.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they only had to play two matches in that, and then they went through the winners bracket the whole time. They just
Yeah.
went ding ding. They lost. Okay, they lost against LGD. They came down, and then they beat Secrets rematch
Optic.
against LGD, and then they lost against no, yeah, Optic Secret.
Secret.
So it's
LGD.
like
Yeah.
so for them, it's like the whole event here is probably on par with like
A normal
group
major.
stage plus one
Yeah.
plus group stage plus one game of TI.
Yeah.
But TI is like 50% big, 50% more than that. So I think that's like where Liquid really shone is that at TI they got knocked down, but they had so much strength to push through.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like that's why I went with Liquid. Is like they're like mentally very very strong as a team, right? So
Yeah,
and they've
I
shown me they can play at this high level, so I'm going with them. But who do you have?
I think I think it's like there's one other thing that's like super important is when the next patch like what are the subsequent balance
Oh yeah.
patches and how do they affect us?
Mm-hmm.
Because right now I would say it's like as close to 50-50 as you could call it between those two teams.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like the odds of Liquid or VP winning is like 50%. And it's always like that going into TI. We have like two or three teams that add up to more than 50% of the odds.
Yeah.
But right now, I think between VP and Liquid, super close. I would probably give the edge to VP, even though Liquid won 3-2.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I would still give the edge to VP, but that's also because we've seen the strong teams go into TI and everyone prepares for them. So going into TI, who are teams going to prepare more against, Liquid or VP? I think they're going to prepare more against Liquid. I think that like Liquid's playstyle is something that teams will think they can just beat, whereas against VP, I think they'll like VP is kind of like this wall that
I mean,
it's so hard to like
if you can
find a
even
little
survive,
sneaky
like
way.
VP is more like can you even survive the first 10 minutes and then you can actually play, like
Yeah. So VP is it's like a fight for survival, and then you have to like start the game. Whereas Liquid, I think there's certain drafts that they do frequently that other teams might think that there's like a way to exploit. So I think teams will try strat more against Liquid than VP.
mm-hmm.
Like VP's had a very consistent playstyle for large chunks of the DPC season, and teams are like just run into it and they just get destroyed.
Yeah.
VP can play early game, late game. Look, I mean, Liquid can match them on most of these ways. But if you think about what the Super Major Grand Finals was all about, like Liquid pulled out like a draw strat. Like
Yeah,
that was
that was
that was like
I like
that
that.
was like clutch. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I,
And I
I,
think
I
it's
was a
like
big
kind of
fan.
cool.
I was like, wow,
Uh,
you guys got smalls do that there, but
yeah, and the rest of the time was just, both teams had very versatile heroes. The series was incredibly close. It was one of those rare games or the rare matches where it was like one team wins, other team equalizes, one team wins, other team equalizes, finals, best of one, and Miracle played, I think, exceptionally well on the TA. And I don't think I watched because I was obviously in Chinatown.
mm-hmm.
I only watched 4 of the 5 games. I don't think I watched the first game, but yeah, his Miracles TA was.
Yeah,
I
Miracles
mean,
Day was great on both
his
games. So,
his Tinker was also really good in the one game, but they lost it.
but I mean, he was playing really good Tinker all throughout the tournament too. So, yeah, it's been pretty good for Liquid.
I think what is kind of seems kind of for sure right now is that like the Dota's been pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's been only a few games which have gone super long. Like there was the one LGD VP game that went over an hour.
Yeah,
But other than that, the games have all been around the 30-minute mark, 35-minute mark,
mm-hmm.
and they've all been like pretty
pretty
exciting to
action packed,
watch.
right?
Yeah,
But
I enjoy this kind of Dota,
I don't know if that's
especially.
actually because of the game right now, or just because like happens to be like Virtus Pro's playing the game. You know?
No, I mean even like Optic EG, like the
Oh,
first
that's
game
true.
was
That's
super
true.
close,
Mm-hmm.
and then the rest of the game, the rest of Optic's games throughout the whole tournament were quite short.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. Oh, we did. Even though we put LGD at like the same tier technically as Liquid and Virtus Pro, like I don't have faith in them. Do you have faith in them winning TI?
It's weird because there was a time when I think it was like probably around the time of MDL.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was actually it was after Epicenter. Yeah, yeah. So I was at GSC Thailand and I was talking with one of my friends, Scans, and LGD had just beaten Liquid
Yeah.
in the finals of Epicenter, and I said to him, "So this LGD thing, is it a fluke? Isn't it? It was their first it was their first win of the season, and it happened to be a major. And they destroyed Liquid in the finals 3-1. The game that Liquid won, it was them playing super well. It wasn't LGD necessarily messing up. And yeah, it wasn't just that also that Liquid lost in the finals and it was like a single elim crappy bracket.
Mm-hmm.
Like they met in the upper bracket and they got 2-0. Like they destroyed Liquid.
Yeah.
When I say destroyed, I don't mean that the game's over in 15 minutes. I just mean from like the 10-minute mark, I felt like
LGD had complete control.
LGD were in control, and there were ways that like Liquid could come back, but LGD were like always prepared for it. They were always setting up. They always had a response ready. It wasn't like they got ratted by Nature's Prophet
Mm-hmm.
and a Chaos Knight. Like it wasn't like some ridiculous late game comeback. So it weren't stomps, but I felt like LGD had a game plan and they stuck to it, and it worked out for them.
But you didn't actually answer the question. Do you think LG? Why do you not have faith in LGD?
So yeah, okay. That was the prologue.
Mm-hmm.
Then at Thailand, I said to Scan, "What do you think about it?" And he said, "I think they're the best team in the world right now." And I said, "Come on, man, come on, bruh. Are you being serious?" And he said, "I think that they're like individual players, their play style, everything is like looking good for them, and they've already reached like such a high level." But it doesn't. We're not sure yet whether that's like the cap of their skill, or are they gonna just get out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that for them, the ceiling of their skill is just as high as Liquid,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's probably the way to describe it is that like you have Virtus Pro who are like super good,
Yeah.
and sometimes they play like a little bit bad, and sometimes they play a little bit good. They're like kind of consistent, and then
Yeah.
Liquid is like a little bit bigger than that. Where like if Liquid are playing their best, I think they can beat Virtus Pro, and
Mm-hmm.
we saw that happen at the Super Major. But sometimes they also just like
They play worse than
a
Virtus
lot
Pro.
worse. Yeah, and then you get the same thing. So if this is Liquid here, then
LGD's
you
there.
have LGD. LGD is like it's like there, So it's like just above. there's a potential that those players, especially since we've seen in the last couple of events how well Chalice has been playing,
Yeah.
and like Chalice, Ame, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
like are all like excellent. Like maybe was a guy who like single-handedly could, before he joined LGD or before he joined this roster, he was a player that just played super well when he played the old LGD squad, when he played even when he played in C deck,
Mm-hmm.
like the whole time that he's been playing, he's been like a super solid player, and he's carried teams.
Mm-hmm.
He's been like the miracle, and now he's on a team where some games he's like by far the best. He's like a god, but some games Chalice just goes nuts, and some games Ame goes nuts. So it's the same as like some games for Liquid where Miracle is viewed as the star of the team, but some games it's mind control that just you know
Sometimes mind control, sometimes
controls.
Matumba Man, sometimes it's GH.
Yeah, like there's just so many superstars on the team, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's weird to think about that. Like people viewed Liquid in the past like this team that just like propelled Miracle, and they also thought this when he was on OG. Like the team is set up to just make sure that Miracle has the best game possible. It's not like that anymore. It's like we're gonna roll the dice, and whoever gets like the best early game, we're gonna just make them get out of control. They're the ones that we want trying to set up for success.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think LGD could win it. Those are like, I think Secret is like we were saying earlier. They're like the gatekeepers between tier 2 and tier 1.
Yeah.
They're tier 1, but they're on the edge. But for the other three teams, I would say it's super close between them.
Yeah. Like
If I had to put money down now, I would say
Virtus Pro. Because you already said it.
I would say like I would put like VP and Liquid at like 9.1
Uh-huh.
and 9 out of 10 in terms of skill, and I'd put like LGD at like 8.5. Like that's like
Yeah.
that's like the threshold that we're reaching right here.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
IMDb ratings though, like
Yeah.
9.1 is like the Godfather.
Mm-hmm. Like here's my problem with LGD is like it's the exact reason why I chose Liquid and why I'm choosing against LGD is because I saw that game 2 against Virtus Pro. Did you see that game 2 against Virtus Pro?
No.
Basically, they had that game in the bag, like, and then they went out and then they thought to themselves, what could we possibly do? What would Eternal Envy do in this very moment? And
Yeah.
and so Ame's like watch this. And then they're pushing up to high ground. They kill like 3 people, and then Ame keeps diving, keeps going towards dive to tier 4. He dies. Then the guy next teammate like trying to save Ame, he dies, and then there ends your push. Even though they could have easily just killed the towers, taken racks. And you think, okay, that's fine once.
So was this which game was this?
Game 2.
So you did this game 2.
Monkey King.
That was a long game. Yeah.
The
That was a long game. I didn't watch that game.
Okay.
I watched.
If you're a fan of throws, then that's the game to watch.
Okay.
Cause
Yeah, I watched game 1 and game 3
Yeah.
of that series. Because I woke up late, and like I said, I watched the finals, the four games of the finals,
Mhm.
and I went back and I watched. Everyone said that game 3 of that series was pretty exciting.
yeah,
And I finished that, and I watched game 1,
Yeah.
and then I went out to a party. So
Yeah.
that was. I didn't have time to spend another hour.
yeah. But basically, basically, all you really need to know is the amount of throws, because it wasn't just 1 throw, it wasn't just 2 throws, it wasn't just 3 throws. It was actually like 5 throws consecutively, and that's how Virtus Pro won that game.
That's what's weird is when you watch highlights of the game, because I watched highlights of the match. I didn't watch the game 1 of the finals, and I didn't realize that it was like so throwy. Like,
It was
you don't
throwy
always
on the
get,
part of
like,
LGD. Like Virtus Pro actually played exactly what they should have done in those situations. But
Yeah.
like basically LGD was like, oh, we're just gonna like LGD for a brief moment became like old Virtus Pro. Like
Yeah.
super divey, like super throwy, super like I'm just gonna ignore the objectives. I'm just gonna go dive in, try to style on these guys. Except they kept dying each time they did it, or like inexplicably they'd be like, oh shit, their cooldowns, their ults are on cooldown because like I think it was like Warlock had used Rock, Void had used Chrono. They had taken Aegis, and then Ami's like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna go push down bottom lane instead of push up towards mid, and then take the racks." It just pushes bottom lane. Everybody gets to ult backs. Like, what was the point of this? There's like a bunch
One
of.
thing I do want to.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. No. Carry on, carry on.
No, I'm basically just saying like that was like eternal envy levels of art.
What I do like about Virtus Pro though this season is like even when they were qualified, like they were qualified super early.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Like the fourth major was when they were qualified, so that was like Bucharest.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was when they qualified, or
Yeah.
I think it was Bucharest when they qualified.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and they got like so early on they had like 7,000 points, and although they did decline they declined MDL Shangsha, they declined
Declined
direct
a few
invites.
events. Yeah.
Yeah, like they slowed down, but they still like kept on succeeding. Like they still had the drive to win.
Mm-hmm.
So the suggestion that I've heard from some of the Russian analysts I've been speaking to is that like they kind of I don't know. Let's see how to describe this. It's like their last like month of high school, and like they've like written most of their exams. All they have to do now is like finish on a clean record, and they can go to like medical school or something.
Mm-hmm.
They mustn't fuck up. And they've done all this work, all this preparation up till now. They've like succeeded. They've got like reached most of their goals. They just mustn't fuck up on like this home straight. They've got like a few more exams and then they're there, or one more big exam, and that big exam is TI, and they don't want to get burnt out. They don't want to get like overstratted. They don't want to reveal too much.
Mm-hmm.
So all they're doing now is just like ticking the boxes. Like, okay, let's cut back a bit on the events. We qualified for TI. They still want to win. Every event they go to, they absolutely want to win. There's no event they go to and they're just like, oh, we don't care. I think they're the kind of team that if they got knocked out in the semifinal, they'd be super pissed off with themselves, but they would like come back for the third, fourth playoff. This is obviously only ESL events that have the third, fourth playoff. But like they would be the guys who are super motivated. Where a team like Liquid, for them, if it's not first, it's shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when it comes to TI, like they're going to be super relaxed, super prepared. They're on a vacation now for another 2 weeks, and then like they're starting off. They're gonna have like a strict scrum regime. They've got so much preparation into this like the build up to TI.
Mm-hmm.
So provided there's no like disasters like visa issues or something that like emotionally screws with their team, they're in like a super solid state, and like their drive to win is incredible. Like it is insane what these guys are like willing to do.
Yeah, they're actually like they're very similar to Astralis this year and last year from CS:GO, in the sense that they're like making sure to manage their like burnout and exhaustion and try to peak towards like the big events, right? Or in this case, the biggest event for Virtus Pro, which would be TI. Right. So like
I
ahead.
don't really talk to Astralis. I mean, like I follow Counter-Strike in the sense I like watch the big events, but I don't like know very many of the like Counter-Strike scene guys, but they're like it's been like publicly announced before by them that they're one of the company I work for makes analytics tools for professional teams, and they are like a customer, and like so I see some of like the communication and like between them and the developers and things they want, and it's just so how to say, like it's so interesting to see like how much they're thinking about the game, even when they're on a break. They're like, oh, we're taking a 2-week break until the next event, or before we start preparing for the next event, and their coach Zonic is like super motivated. In the case of Virtus Pro, who are also customers of ours, and those side, like they're analysts, and he's like so motivated to just like push them forward. Like I think he's like a super hidden gem of their team, and that's what it takes. A great team isn't just 5 players. It requires 5 brilliant players, but having a team around you, having a team supporting you is so important.
Yeah. It's generally pretty hard. Like even if you have like an all-time great leader, it's like basically you're just kind of like short-circuiting. You're basically creating a shortcut for yourself. Like it just happens that Xiao Weight's also a great drafter, a great leader, a great coach, a great all of this stuff, right? Like
Yeah,
in reality, you very rarely get that type of person. And even if you do, like even just getting a great analyst, like helps the burden so much. Or in Virtus
yeah,
Pro's
yeah.
case, like they have an analyst, like you said, and they also have the fact that like Ramsey's is drafting now.
Yeah, but I mean, and they've also got like a brilliant coach,
Yeah,
like a TI winner. You know, it also helps.
Arzart was it?
Art stuff.
Artso. Okay, yeah. I always get them mixed up
Yeah,
because they have similar IDs. But
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, famously won TI one, and then TI two was part of like I think one of like the one of the worst teams an event.
Hmm.
He at a TI. He was part of Team Dara.
Oh man.
They they didn't do well. They went like they also were like bottom of groups. You know,
Hmm.
like how people used to flame Cinderin for going for like having such a bad TI win rate.
Yeah.
Dara had like the same record as him that year.
Hmm.
Was 3-11 and then eliminated. They didn't get eliminated first round. That was pretty big.
Yeah.
They got eliminated second round.
So.
That was back when TI won the lower bracket. I mean TI two when like the lower brackets was all best of one
Hmm.
until the third fourth playoff.
Yeah. It was a
Well, not third fourth. It's like fourth losers brackets semi-final.
yeah. It's a
Is
rough.
what I guess.
It was a rough time back then. It was a
Yeah.
rough time back then. All right. So I guess we'll move on to the next subject. One of the reasons I brought you on here is because I like to hear people gloat when they're completely right. In my case, I was completely right about PPD being the one true answer for EG the entire time. For like the last 2 years, I've been right. But in this case, you were completely on the ball with your reasoning, with your logic about the fact that TI qualifier slots would be like three NA1s and then so on and so forth. So and also apparently you also have some kind of like in with all the Valve people and like they specifically told you everything apparently according to one guy. Shout out to that one guy on Reddit.
What was brilliant was the person Vikramond who coached Alliance during TI4. He was the guy who posted the
Oh,
like
okay.
the snippet, and then I went and found the guy. Like I hunted down, and like his name was something like "Get rich or die trying" in lead speak.
Mm-hmm.
I like found the exact comment just because I wanted to see if anyone else had said anything in response. And then by the time I got there, he'd already said, "Oh, look, these guys are already like tweeting about it like it's a joke." I was just like, what do you expect? This is like obviously the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was quite funny. I'm very glad that Optic, for that reason and only this reason, I'm glad Optic lost to VP
Yeah, man. Because if Optic made
because
it, I'm not certain NA would have gotten three.
yeah, I think NA would have got two, China two, CIS two. So CIS fans can be mad at Virtus Pro for that, I guess.
Yeah, PPD always ruining the dreams of Europeans and CIS and China, and basically the world.
Yeah.
Right. So
It's looking pretty good for him. I was hoping he wouldn't make it just so that he would be a TI because he was like my highlight of TI7, I guess. He said some good stuff on the panel. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind. I mean, all the talent, like kind of a told to be yourself type thing, whatever. I guess what whatever that means,
yeah,
have an opinion, don't just be this like shy person. But when it comes to TI, you do feel like a lot more like stressed and pressured, and
you
it's
you
like
want to
big
play it
stake.
you want to play it safe, whereas like PPD's like, no, this guy's trash. This guy's trash.
Yeah,
This guy is trash. Right.
yeah, and he was also on a panel with like Ake, who's like, like a super nice, chill guy, won't flame people. Quinn didn't say too much when he was on panel. Like, I can't even remember who else the panelists were. I don't even remember who the host was. All I remember is just PPD saying good stuff.
Yeah, like PPD's actually excellent. You can like he's just like he's like very straight up, like very opinionated. Get no nonsense
Yeah,
bullshit from him. So it's always great to hear him talk.
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just sad that he's gonna be.
he's actually
It's very
good.
like, no, he's actually gonna be playing this year because like the way I think about it now is like NA has 3 slots, and I think one has to say Optic are like the odds-on favorite to make it. I think like everyone can say they've got like a huge chance of making it.
Yeah,
And then beyond that, that's where like the questions come in. So I'm pretty excited to see how those qualifiers go. Even though what's nice in some ways is that there's not too many open qualifier teams.
mm-hmm.
And that's that's like really good in my opinion because it's I don't know if you know this, but the regionals are open qualifiers are like single elimination,
Mm-hmm.
best of one,
Yeah, I knew
until it
that.
reaches a certain amount of teams, and then it goes to like it's still single elim, but it's best of three. So I'm just glad that we're not like there's not so many open qualifier teams that we see like really bad match like important matches being decided as best of ones in a single elimination bracket.
I mean, I would have laughed my ass off if somehow EG got eliminated in best of ones. But yes, I actually completely agree with you. You actually want good teams to get into to play best of threes. Like if they get eliminated by best of three, like I'm not gonna complain, right? I don't think anybody's gonna complain
Mm.
if like a great team gets eliminated by best of three because you had your shot, so to say.
What's quite funny is I was looking at like some betting sites earlier today. We were talking about like which teams are most likely to make it through each region,
Mm-hmm.
and I just looked at one and it was like 92% chance that Optic makes it, and it was exactly the same odds for VTJ Storm and EG. So I think it's like the return that you're getting is 8.3% on your investment,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like they view it as like super sure bets. So
Mm-hmm.
that's quite funny in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. So
I think it's like Optic, and then it's like below Optic is VTJ Storm, and EG is like anywhere. It could be anywhere on the board.
really,
So
I got a prediction like they make it to TI, but then they crash out pretty hard.
who
E,
makes EG?
EG, yeah. Because all right,
Mm,
here's my reasoning, right? Because
yeah,
obviously I think TI is a completely different kettle of fish compared to every other tournament, and so I look at this team and I
yeah,
look, okay, have you actually solved your resource distribution problem? You did with Crit because you hit Bring and Fly, but you didn't with Artesia and Sumail. Okay, that's still an issue. Your second
yeah,
issue is S4 as a player. He has his like highest peak of form is always correlated to how good the team environment is. So you think about Alliance, you think about OG. Those were his best days, so to speak.
yeah,
And then you look at the secret like collapse at TI. That was
yeah.
like a terrible like team identity, so to speak, at that particular tournament. He crashed out.
I
So
kind of dis
go ahead.
I kind of disagree. I mean, I think that what you're talking about is important, but I think it's almost always like this is like the result, whereas the important thing is like the input.
Mm-hmm.
So they crashed out of TI Shaw, and he was actually playing really bad in that
Yes.
TI. I think most people were saying that like it was all about his performance. And I don't think that's true, but I think it was like a very important
I mean, at the
uh
time, everybody was saying it was
factor.
Kuroki, but
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that Reddit was saying it was
yeah,
Karaki.
but actual
But I
people
think
were
it,
saying it
most
was S4.
yeah, most of the people were saying S4, like especially his Queen of Pain in that one game was like very bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the other games too well, but yeah, part of me just remembers him. Almost everyone I remember talking to discussing it was saying it was the drafts were kind of predictable,
Mm-hmm.
which was okay going into a TI. Like, you have your set plan and you want to execute, and if you think it's the best plan, you're going to execute every time. Um, so draft predictability and just like the Queen of Pain not playing super well. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I think it was just after that we saw like a lot of dirty shit happening. Like people were discussing, like backstabbing and everyone blaming Kuro, and then it was like a Reddit thing, and everyone hates like who do you support, Puppy or Kuro, or left or right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
got blown out of proportion. I think that like the better way to think about it is like when they were on Alliance,
Yeah.
you had Loda who was super greedy, and you had Admiral Bulldog who was like the greediest offlaner in the game at the time. And in some sense, since he's moved to the three position, he got super way more flexible. Like think about it like this: in Alliance, he was like a relatively selfless mid.
Yeah.
In um, in Secret, he was like a relatively selfless mid or safe laner.
Mm-hmm.
They alternated. Arteezy mostly played mid, and he played safe lane.
Yeah.
Or when he played mid, he made like a space creator.
Yeah.
Whatever. And then OG was like the next step, and then EG similar. It's a very similar role. So it's kind of this like progression where his like priority is decreased.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think if he went like the other way around, or if he went like out of order, like not necessarily in a um, ascending or descending order, it would be way more difficult for him. but I think he's like so versatile as a player that his individual play is almost always going to be good, and it's all just about like confidence going into the event, and like the build up to Secrets performance, the build up to Alliance performance was all just about like building confidence for the team.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he's confident to make like to trust himself, like he'll make the right decision. And what happened at TI was just like a random encounter. Like it was just, he
You think it's like
for
a
some reason he wasn't. Yeah, I mean the thing is they lost to Ehome, I think it was in the winners bracket final, and then they
Mm-hmm.
got knocked out by like the next they played IG, and then they got knocked out by VP.
Yeah.
I think that the eHome thing was just like a confidence shock. Like it was like, I don't know what to do, and maybe the team wasn't in a way to support him. Maybe it was just the team didn't realize that he needed support. I think he's grown a lot as a person now. Think about when they went into TI3, like they were the most confident team. They were like big dick bandits walking in there. They had like the longest streak. They had in 150 games they'd won like 75%. Like the
Mm-hmm.
highest streak ever. They were the gods going in, and the same thing happened when he was in Secret, but they maybe just didn't have the friendship around him. it, there's so much that happens behind the scenes. It's like very hard. We can only guess.
Yeah.
But if I had to like put money down on this, I would say like he had like a nervous break or a confidence break, and there was like not the correct support structures to help him get out of that and bounce back.
Yeah. Like
But on EG, I just want to say he's got Fly, and Fly, he's like the cuddly ninja. He's like he does karate, but he's like super caring. I think he's like a very good person to understand what it takes to win, and he's like the right kind of person to work with S4. Like I always felt that the pairing between them was like the power of friendship in some ways more than No-Tail and Fly.
obviously not. Obviously now because No Tail and Fly have split. But yes. Here.
Yeah,
Here's my problem. Is like you actually highlighted part of the problem. Is like you're talking about like this team structure. Like it kind of like broke his confidence in that particular TI. It's kind of like a black swan event, if you want to call it that, like because they didn't see it coming. In a sense, like everything
yeah,
was going great until it didn't, and then they had no idea how to recover, right? But we look at this EG without Fly and S4. We look at like every single roster move that's happened since. Like, and every player that's come out is like Zai's like, yeah, it's super depressing in there. Misery's like, oh, thank God I am out of there. Fear's like, I am going to retire. Oh no, wait, I can actually go to South America instead and play with Swindles. Like everybody else seems pretty happy to leave EG. Like,
yeah.
and I look at EG. I look at the fact that basically like Fly's coming in as the captain, but he doesn't necessarily have the power, right? And he doesn't necessarily have
Mhm.
like the right personalities because I don't necessarily know the personalities. But I'm gonna go ahead and guess Arteezy, Sumail, and Crit are not like No Tail, Seb, um, Jerax necessarily. Like I don't think they're like
I,
really one-to-one personality like
I,
personalities.
I think that like every single one of those three players is like a completely different case.
Yeah.
Like if you think about like obviously Crit and Crit's played with them before.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's back in the day.
Yeah.
Think that Crit and Fly is like not a problem at all. Like I think that's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think Arteezy and S4 like played together, a lot of like friendship, and I think like Arteezy trusts S4 and S4 trusts Fly, so it's like a three-way type of thing. So yeah, I think that the question is really just how is Sumail going to deal with this? I think that's really what it's all about. Like, does Sumail trust Fly, or maybe another way to think about it is S4 going to mold the game around Sumail? In the same way like Miracle came along and Anna, like Fly wants to just make Sumail succeed, and he'll do things to make him succeed. And in that way, you don't need to have Sumail trusting Fly. You have everyone trusting Fly and Fly maneuvering them around to like support the quarterback, which will be Sumail.
Mm-hmm.
Because Arteezy will do whatever it takes. You tell Arteezy do this, he'll do it. His performance, I think his performance on EG was like mediocre, but it was never like there was some games where he got like completely caught out, like he just died in the middle of nowhere. But that to me was just seems more like frustration more than like bad play necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes you're just like, we're in such a bad position. We need to win. How do we get out of this like slump we're in? Like, what's happening? And you're like, okay, boys, I'm just gonna go farm. And he gets caught out halfway across the map, dies, game's over. But when EG was succeeding with him, or any team succeeding with him, they're the teams that are on like the front foot. They're feeling confident. They, they're the ones that are gonna just come in it running. They're gonna be the ones trying to dictate how the game works. And yeah, like for the most part, this period now, but like for the last week or so, and now this during open qualifiers is just about building confidence, because even if they just scrape through by the skin of their chinny chin chin, there's a very long period of time between regionals and actual TI. It's like,
2 months.
I want to say like, no. I
1
think
month.
it's a little bit less than that. I think it's like 6 weeks. Never checked.
6 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, because
And everybody's gonna be going to Canada to practice, so you're gonna get good practice if you make it that
yeah,
far.
yeah. So it's about 6 weeks from regionals ending to when you travel to, because the people will probably travel like a couple of days before, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably about 6 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks about until you go. So yeah, I mean, people want to go to Canada early to practice, but here's the other thing: is who they're going to practice against.
They haven't practiced. That's actually another one of the reasons why I'm picking against them. Like they haven't practiced against anybody in this last week,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's not the thing. Is no. At the Super Major, they would have practiced definitely.
Yeah.
Since Super Major ends, they get home, and everyone else arrives home at a similar time.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you, like Complexity, for example, they were like, everyone's at the Super Major. Everyone who's like super good. We're not going to play against South American teams necessarily. Like
Mm-hmm.
we need to practice. We need to get good opponents. So they like packed up their stuff in America and they came and visited me in Europe. And they were playing from our offices for like the last week or so. They left
So
this morning.
they went to Europe, and potentially they may have learned all of the secrets that No Tail may have given them about Fly. I'm just putting it out there.
I mean, that would be pretty. That would be OG also has a house in Berlin. So
I'm just saying, man. Like that's the best best type of revenge.
yeah, so they've been practicing against European teams, or Russian teams. I wouldn't be surprised if Complexity surprised. I mean, maybe they don't, maybe they fall flat, but they've done what it takes to set themselves up for success. Whereas EG now, they were at the Super Major. They definitely got some good scrims in there against like the top teams in the world. But now they go back to America, and the grind starts in just a couple of days.
Yeah,
I think it's like 2 days.
mm-hmm. Pretty soon.
Yeah, 2 days.
Yeah. All right. And here,
So
yeah.
So I mean, America is going to be a bloodbath, but so is every other region.
Yeah.
I think that's like the best story about this.
I mean, if TI qualifiers aren't a bloodbath, I don't think you're doing it right. That's just my opinion.
Some region in the past have had like teams that are like the de facto like
Obvious in.
yeah, and those have actually been the most surprising ones. Like there was Team Tinker that didn't make it.
Yeah.
They got beaten by Archon. That was pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I'm excited to see what happens in these.
Yeah, I feel like I always have like rules like 2 out of 8, which is basically like two upsets out of like 8 teams. Like somebody's gonna get upset, right? Like it's just how it works.
It's just gonna happen. Yeah.
I will add this final point because it's not necessarily it's weird just because the sample size obviously isn't very huge, but I don't necessarily know if Fly is cut out for TI as a leader, just because of obviously like his success as a leader wasn't necessarily great there, and one of his years he was the best team going in, another years he was one of the better teams going in, and both times it wasn't. Both times were underwhelming in both cases, so I don't necessarily know if he has it in him. Whereas like somebody like Puppy, Kuroki, PPD, Shao 8, these guys I know they do have it in them. So that's like another factor as to why like I think they might crash and burn, because like it's already I'll put it this way, it's already difficult to like get five players together, no matter how talented, you make them a team that fast.
Yeah.
And then you put them in the pressure cooker where like everything can go to hell like real quick. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be it's just a tough ask for me.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is like TI is like
It's its own thing.
I, I think TI is like yeah, it's a completely different beast, and you can be like one of the best teams in the world coming in, and you'll just get kicked out. You'll be treated like trash. You can be like the 2014 DK, and you can come like third or fourth or fifth, or who cares.
Mm-hmm.
You can be OG, after winning 3 majors and then going in and coming up what like
Nothing.
seventh, eighth.
Right.
Was it eighth? Was it ninth, 10th?
It was seventh to
Like,
eighth the second time. It was like ninth to 10th the first time or something.
yeah, yeah. So, it's a completely different thing, and it really because of such a decent format, it all boils down to your ability to beat the top teams,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why players and why teams love it so much is you get this. Like, there's no more excuses.
There's like
It's not
zero
like, oh,
excuse at TI.
yeah, the format is brilliant. You have to beat the top teams to get to the top. There's discussion about like the first, like if you come bottom 2 or bottom 4 versus like the next tier up.
Mm-hmm.
There's some discussion there, like oh this group was a bit harder than this group, but no one cares about those people anyway.
Yeah.
Like it's like I don't want to quote Ricky Bobby, but it is so true. If you're not first, you're last. Like that's the way that the players think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll maybe 6 months later they'll be like, okay, I wasn't too unhappy that we came top 6, but I really wanted more. Like that's everyone's goal is to win a TI.
Yeah.
And if you look at Flyer's record, TI 3, 7th to 8th.
He wasn't the leader in that one, I think.
Well, he was on Fnatic.
No, wait.
So like
Fnatic. I'm thinking of Complexity
he
actually. That wasn't that it.
Well, okay, so TI 3 he wasn't the leader. TI 4 they didn't come last, but they came just below last. They came 13th, 14th.
Yeah.
The TI 4 had like the worst format.
Yeah,
so,
like that's like the only one that's like a weird caveat to it, right?
I'm willing to say that is like equivalent of like 9th, 10th. Like at worst.
Yeah.
TI 5 was when he played for Complexity. He came 9th through 12th. They dropped the Yules. Worse things have happened.
Mm-hmm. It's not like he was the leader of that one either. So it's like, I mean, he wasn't the leader of that one. He was the leader of the ones before. So.
Yeah, I mean, he was. I think he was kind of the quiet guy in that team. Like Swindle's obviously super dominant in terms of like leadership, and Moon Meander also an offlaner who has ideas, got like smart things that he wants to say. He'll try to get the points across. So I think that's the kind of team where Flyer has to just be like making the early important decisions, and he just has to be in a position where he's like strong enough to defend himself. That was, whatever. Things didn't work out for them. They lost against Virtus Pro then.
Yeah.
Virtus Pro went on to beat Secret. Virtus Pro went on to lose to LGD. LGD was the third best team. So, he did drop his Yules, but it was a super close series against VP. If they won that series, the final match, it could have been a completely different TI. We might have seen Team Secret be the ones that come back and fight EG to get into the winners bracket.
Yeah.
But yeah, for Fly, it wasn't to be. He came 9th to 12th, so just below top 8. Same thing happened at TI 6. They lost to TNC.
Mm-hmm.
And in TI 7, they got one step closer, but they lost to LGD.
Yeah, it wasn't much better, was it? Not in the end.
I think top 8, like making top 8 at TI, that's like, if this is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, that's like the 32,000 level.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe it's like one below, what's one below 30? Yeah, 32,000 is a bank, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the last kind of thing where you're like, okay, no matter what happens, if we crash and burn, we get destroyed in 20 minutes. I came top 8 at TI. I'm one of the best 40 players of the year. Like that's a milestone.
Well, first off, I don't actually believe that, but yes.
No, well, you don't believe that you're one of the best players of the year, or
yeah, like if you listen, man, I saw this player named Shiki. He made it to the TI finals. I'm not necessarily gonna put him like top 10 players of that year.
Hey, can you stop spreading ideas from an upcoming video that we're putting together? Worst players to be in a TI finals.
Hey,
man,
that's
we're still going to do that.
Yeah, listen, I already wrote an article, but it's not going to be about the worst players. It's just going to be specifically about Cheeky. So there's no overlap here.
Okay, okay.
But
Yeah, I mean, I think that TI7, they lost to LGD.
mm-hmm.
TI7 had a bunch of teams that were running hot. Maybe that just wasn't, that OG got their revenge on TNC, but then it fell one step there. So
Yeah, like
maybe Fly's gonna make top six this year with EG. Is that where we're heading?
I, I don't know. Like I feel like top six would actually be a pretty good accomplishment with this particular team, just because it's like created so quickly. Like
Yeah,
like
they've got the potential. They have to admit that they have the potential
like
to do it.
I'll admit this. Like on paper, this is like a sick lineup. On paper, I just don't know if they can necessarily get it to working.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right.
I think if I were them and I came top six, I'd be happy. Like, even though what we just discussed is like these guys,
One win,
it's
like
first or last.
yeah.
Yeah.
hmm I mean,
I think,
we've seen crazier things happen. CDEC made it finals. Wings won somehow. I guess Wings winning isn't as crazy, but that's pretty good. Of course, there's always resolution, and either of his runs, like that, both of them were fucking crazy.
I think DC's run was
The craziest.
insane.
That one's
I think
really up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the origin story is great, man. Did you ever hear the quote from Misery? I always use it all the time. It's like famous like rah rah speech. You are all shit. Like that's just so funny to me.
Gotcha.
That one was just too funny to me because that's literally what he said, and then for whatever reason it got better right after he said that. But yeah. All right. Here's my next question because we're gonna keep going through these TI qualifiers.
Sure.
Did China deserve two?
Okay, so this is actually the only contentious thing because if we're at the position where NA gets three and everyone else has one except
SEA.
SEA has two, I think that this last slot, who can you make a case for? Well, straight away, I think you can remove South America from this. You can remove NA because there's no way they're getting four.
Yeah.
Like that would actually be like
That'd be some bullshit right there.
okay. So you're left with
EU, CIS,
yeah,
SEA,
yeah,
China.
no, yeah. So see, like statistically, based on like the teams and how they've placed throughout the season, top 20, etc., etc. My like the stats are telling me it should be CIS,
Mm-hmm.
and my head is saying everything up to this point seems fine, but I don't think CIS absolutely deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
So my like kind of compromise, which I wrote about, was if I were to decide, I would make the runner-up of Europe and CIS play for that final spot, because there's all the stats that we're basing this on is based off like the season so far, but there's a lot of teams that have moved around. A bunch of North American teams who are playing in whatchamacallit, the
SA? Was that what you mean?
European region.
Oh, yeah,
No, European region.
Yeah.
One who's playing in South America is like I think irrelevant most. Like it's just one team.
Yeah.
It's not too much. There's a bunch of top like NA teams who are playing in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's like as a compromise, just to reduce any like whining or moaning. Europe and CIS are like the only two regions which are close enough that we can actually say, let's make these guys have a playoff on Europe West. Like it's not going to be high ping. It's going to be like 45 ping, 50 ping. It's fine.
Man. I mean, if
But-
it was up to me, I'd totally jazz it up. Be like, we're gonna actually make a literal Thunderdome arena, and then they're gonna fight it out. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
So that was what I said. That's kind of where I didn't carry on coming up. I didn't want to make it come up too far. Like basically, I was like, that's where my article stopped. Was like those hypotheticals.
Mm-hmm.
Now since then, obviously, lots of people have told me what they think about me and my parents, and they told me how they're gonna
Okay.
what they're gonna do to me at the next time they see me. Whatever. But for the most part, I think that like the only convincing arguments that I've heard have been Southeast Asia has got two slots, and the teams that we expect to go in there are two like relatively well-known teams who performed moderately well in the season. So who else is coming out of SCA? Like, are we seeing someone else? We've always seen great talent come out there. Is there someone else there that's deserving? And this was something that, like, I think most publicly, Jackie Lamau was advocating for. Saying SCA's got like a lot of talent. There's also some teams that have moved over there. There's even a European team that moved there
Mm-hmm.
about a month ago with Hester Joe Rotten, Neuer, Black, and I don't remember. Scan's coaching that team. Team Entity.
Yeah.
And so I've heard from them that they've like been scrimming against all the top teams there, and I don't buy the arguments. But part of the reason I don't buy it is like every single player and coach and team has like an agenda,
Yes.
and every fan has an agenda. Like they're all
Mm-hmm.
advocating for their region because they want more chances of
Their
making
region
it,
making it.
out.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like when I hear like an argument coming from a player from Europe bitching about, or a manager of a European team saying, "Oh, Europe deserves more than one slot. We got so much talent. This is ridiculous." I just have part of me is just like turns off. I'm just like, whoops. If I hear it from someone like an American talking about
SCA or
like
China or something.
SCA or something, then I'm like a little bit more open to hear what they say. So in that way, what Jackie Lamau said, I just turned off. I don't buy that.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that the Europe CIS thing is like a fair compromise if they're the playoff. But the only other person who's come with an argument that's reasonable is Gods, and not the one argument where he was like they've got like the most salaried players. Like I don't care how many salaried pro players you have. If you want to do well, you got to.
I mean, look, Wings won. They didn't get much salary. Just pointing that out.
Yeah, yeah. Like the Wings, the manager of Wings at the Frankfurt was doing stats for the Chinese production, and he was like talking about how he lives with the like Wings players. Two of them were staying with him.
Yeah.
Like I knew their situation was kind of fucked up.
Like that's actually why I consider that like such a great run because I already knew like they had like a bunch of weird things going on and they still somehow won. So I was like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so I'm willing to accept like the other argument, which is just like the region's got a lot of depth, and even though we can make the argument that there's some teams that like just they don't perform well in qualifiers, they can't get out because of all these top teams. I don't actually buy that. What I do buy is that there's sometimes teams that just have such a unique play style, but they don't have like the experience or the execution against the top Chinese teams, which play in a very specific way. You have to either have to like play at their game and beat them, which is very hard, or you have to come with a style that like they are unable to adapt to. And in that way, China is very unique in that it's had teams that have come out of China and they've been able to like destroy the West
Mm-hmm.
In very various ways. Whereas I don't think there's like specific teams like that too commonly in the West which can defeat everyone. Like Alliance at TI3, they were a team that could go to China and they would just like
Slaughter
they just
everything.
smack some bitches.
Yeah.
Like they could do what they wanted. The old like very old Navi, like they're the team that like
Yeah.
they play in a tournament and you don't know what's going to happen from them.
Mhm.
And that's what it takes. It's like this unpredictability, this like raw talent and intuition. And Wings brought that out. And if there's any region that's going to bring that out again, it's China, which is going to bring that out. That's the argument about. I don't care about how many pro salary teams you have. Like, I don't care how hard your qualifiers are.
Mm-hmm.
Like China's the region with like the most activity in gameplay at the top level. Like if there was a team there that was like able to defeat all the Chinese gods and collect all the Pokemon, they can catch it all. They could make it onto like the top 50 ratings or top 20 ratings.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what we need here is like a surprise team that can come out of nowhere, that can come through the quality. We need like energy pacemaker but with more skill. And I think that if there's a region for that, it's China.
All right. Fair enough. Makes sense. So, pretty sure Actually, I'll go ahead and ask. Do you think there's going to be any other surprises from like the teams that are coming outside of the regions? I feel like it's pretty obvious for most of the regions what's coming out. Like what team is likely to come out.
I think China is because they got two slots.
Yeah.
Everyone's expecting it to be IG LFY, with secondary runners being Keen Gaming and eHome,
Right.
and maybe IGV. Like those are like the top five there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and once again, I think that like if I had to bet money, I would probably put money on IG and not on LFY or like beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Like in all the regions, I would only put money on like the on one team.
Yeah.
Like no matter what the odds are, because there's just so many teams that like can come up with this unpredictable game style. I'm not actually 100% sure on the qualification procedure for China and NA, because for the region where there's just one team, it's best of one round robin, top four go into best of three, double elim, best of five finals. But I'm not sure um, in the regions where there's multiple slots if like the top there's two ways about this. Either more teams come out of the double elim, or one team gets like a bypass. Like if you whoever does the best round robin
Gets it.
bypasses
Okay.
the playoff. Yeah. So those are the two options, and I think that like if it's that way, like you can just go round robin beat everyone, like it could actually favor a team like LFY quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they're the team that could come with a unique strategy every time, and they could just destroy people. Whereas part of me just feels that IG, when it comes to best of threes, they're able to adapt more like game to game.
Mm-hmm.
LFY have made it to a bunch of majors. How many is it? Like three?
Yeah. Pretty
Uh,
decent amount considering.
uh, One, yeah. So they've been to five events, it
Yeah.
seems, or four. No, four.
Okay.
Uh,
I mean, should I?
this doesn't include direct invites. So they were at Macau. Oh yeah. They were at Macau, Genting, and Birmingham,
Mm-hmm.
and as they qualified for. I wanted to just see what the split was in terms of qualification.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then they also did hmm, Bucharest Major. I think they were a direct invite to that. And Birmingham they qualified for Perfect World Masters. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the one where they did okay. So yeah, it was like five events or something this season that they made it to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for the most part, I just like I felt like they're a team which they can often just lose out in these longer series. Like in the China qualify, the one series I actually was impressed by them was in the ESL Birmingham qualifiers, the China qualifier,
Yeah.
where they played the finals best of five against LGD. I mean against IG, sorry,
Okay.
and they won at 3-2. And that was like the only time I was like super impressed by them. And it was also one of those games where it was like tit for tat,
Mm-hmm.
LFY, IG, LFY, IG, LFY. Um, but for the most part, I really like IG's play style in the longer series, like the places they can adapt. Like in that same qualifier, IG beat LGD. You
Mm-hmm.
know, LGD takes game one, IG comes back with two.
Yeah.
The game before that, IG take first blood, eHome come back, and IG seal the deal. So I'm just a bigger fan of IG in the longer series, and I think if it's more teams coming into the double elim, or into the double elim bracket, and more teams, the more teams coming out, then I think that favors IG a little bit more. So I'm interested to see what it is, because I know for the single regions what the format is. I'm just not sure about the
Mm-hmm.
NA and China and SEA.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll wrap this up with a final question. What do you think of the new TPC? Like so far, like I seem to like most of the changes. Like there's no roster lock. There's the entire like conflict of interest thing.
Hmm.
It's a lot more structured. It's basically just five CS:GO style majors, basically, as far as I can
Yeah,
tell.
yeah.
Right.
I like all the big picture stuff of what they've said. Like I think all of it's really good. Um, the big thing is obviously uh like what are the small details about this? Like how is this working? How is this working? Like we've heard, for example, that you lose 20% of your points, but like let's say two people leave your team. If they both leave at the same time, do you lose 40%? Or do you lose 20%, taking you to 80% of your original, and then another 20%, so you lose 16%, so you go to 64%?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how does it work? Like there's a lot of like these like it's the same thing that happened when the DPC came out. Everyone was like, "Yay, it's more transparency," but the details were kind of what let the system down.
Mm-hmm.
So I like all of the changes, especially the conflict of interest. That's like obviously brilliant. Um, it's just all about how the smaller details come together and how they like fix up the system, I guess.
Yep. All right. I think that's everything. Unless you had something else you want to talk about.
Um, nah, I think that was good. We've been talking a long time.
Yeah.
Don't wanna. I'm pretty sure no one's actually listening right now.
Yeah.
People on YouTube in 2027
Mm-hmm.
looking back at these godlike predictions that we're making. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that for the most part, next season of DPC is going to be better, but how much better? It's like the real question.
Yeah. I think it'll depend on the patching a lot. If it's even like similar to this one, like I don't know how great it'll be, but we'll see. We will see. All right. See you guys later.